Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. We're super excited to share with you how our fusion fight went, do a little debrief, and at the end, we'll be talking about our fight next week with Bloodsport, so make sure you stay tuned for that. This year is Tantrum's first ever year making the elimination
tournament.
So that is super, super exciting. And now we went from the top 32 to the top 16. We're really thrilled. Something our team really believes is innovating, developing new technology, not sticking with the same thing. And so for us, this has really been a testament to the idea of iteration, perseverance, sticking with it, and doing new stuff. So we're super excited to have you on the journey. And in light of that, we want to have these debriefs every week where we answer your questions and talk about some of the stuff that we've been up to. And this week we actually had a record number of questions, which I will just flash right here. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram at Seems Reasonable. That's our team name, Seems Reasonable Robotics. And we'll be doing this every week. And we love, love, love to answer your questions. And we're going to do our very best to get through all of them today. So starting off, going into the fight, what was our plan, Aren? How are you feeling? And we actually have questions from two people, Rider Pride 13 and Red and Blue Robotics, both asked, why did we use forks instead of the wedge? And how did you make that choice?
I'm going to rewind a bit. We were stoked to get 18th seed.
Yes.
That was, we had done our own chat as a team the night before. Probably we put ourselves, I don't know, 25 territory. So it was great to see the 18. And I think some of the things that led to that were, like even though our Adam 94 fight wasn't very long, it really showed we could take a very substantial hit and pop right back up, keep going. Showing off that type of durability and bounce back and fixing problems, etc. that we had, like sort of fixing our Valkyrie fight issues with the batteries stuff, that type of stuff. So I think those are the things that led to us landing at that 18th seed, which we're stoked at that level, especially the first time in the tournament. So one of the nice parts about the tournament is it stops becoming ambiguous who you're facing next. As soon as you win a match, you get to know who you're facing next at most within a couple hours before the next fight happens. As opposed to waiting till 3 a.m. the night before. So drawing fusion was a fun one. Just they're one of the bots. So you stare at it and go, there's two different ways you usually face each one of these robots, each one of these weapons. So then you got to do, yeah. So the Wachi guys are actually more open than you'd think as far as letting you wander in and poke around and look at the robots and stuff. So we were able to do some pre-match recon for figuring out the horizontal spinner actually hits on our armor above where our normal front wedge would be. And that made it a real simple decision to throw the forks on there and call it good.
Our wedge only goes this high and their horizontal spinner.
Yeah, the horizontal spinner hits above it on the main armor hoop anyway. So shrug. It did mean it was a steeper angle, so we'd likely just be taking more of the brunt of the hits as opposed to deflecting, but it's all shock mounted and a lot of steel, so I wasn't too worried about that. So yeah, going into the fight, it was wedgelets, easy peasy call, go for it.
Cool. Yeah. So once the fight got underway, something that happened, towards the first half of the fight is we actually took a fairly large hit from fusion right in our weapon. And you can sort of see that right here in this picture as the horizontal weapon is going into ours. So a few people like Chaotic Robotics, Donut Cop 2, XX Turtle, and Bamba Bots all asked us, how was the puncher spinning even after it looked really badly, Ben? And how does it function? And what's going on there, Aren?
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody follows the Hypershock and Witch Doctor crews have been doing Tail of the Tape, and they did a recent thing about powering your weapon via chains or belts. And Tantrum fields slated. Hub motors are also an option. So in this case, the carriage was almost ripped out of the robot, and the carriage is, we refer to that as, it's the moving part, the part with the disc, et cetera, that moves back and forth. So that was almost ripped out of the robot. And during our earlier Valkyrie fight, there was also some deformation stuff that happened back there, but it was in the other direction. It went down instead of trying to rip it up and out. So when that got ripped out, the wires going to it were still intact enough to let it keep spinning, because the motor inside the disc, the bearings, the carriage, all of that is as close as you're going to get to a brick as possible. Making any of that bend or etc. be pissed off is real hard to do. So it was spinning for a bit, and then it did stop, which spin up time's not the greatest, so it's hard to tell quite what happened, but the speed controller going to it did die for spinning the weapon a bit after this happened. So I was able to spin the weapon for a bit, and then some stuff shifted around, shorted, and that took out that speed controller.
So just for like a quick recap, we basically have two different systems. There's the forward and backwards on the rail, but the weapon itself is powered by a different motor. So even if we get all jacked up and out of line, if the motor in the hub of the weapon is still working fine, it was still able to spin until our speed controller obviously got infected later. So
infected.
The next question.
Exploded, infected, whatever.
Really the sort of pinnacle of the match, the talk of the town, which is what exactly happened when fusion got on our head. Do you know, Aren, what happened? What exploded? Did we explode them? Did they explode themselves? What was going on?
Yeah, so you can definitely notice, well, as far as exactly what happened for them, they were running upside down towards us because they had been flipped over in the main exchange. That meant their vertical spinner was spinning the wrong way. So they hit us at pretty low speed and just climbed on top of us. And then I believe Reese turned on the vertical spinner again, and their motor controller, no sensors, etc., a whole lot more, I'm going to say Wild West control wise, excitedly exploded. And it was actually really loud. So I don't fully remember if they like dubbed in the audio on that, but the actual explosion was a pretty solid bang. We actually did borrow and test and explode one of that same model of controllers a couple weeks before the event from the hijinks team, trying to get our spin up time down, and it let out a lot of angry pixies in very enthusiastic fashion. So we immediately beelined to the other direction from that one.
Yep.
So in that case, that was us blowing up one. I believe they had 6 in their blow up, 2 for each weapon and 2 for drive.
Oh wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we knew that was possible. We knew it was a weak point. I think they could have avoided it. Like that might not have happened had he not tried to turn the weapon on top of us.
Gotcha. So I guess that also relates to questions that Madman 2415 and Ryan 007 and Luke all asked once they were on top of us and on fire. Why didn't they stop to get fusion off? Why didn't we use our self-righting mechanism to try to get them off?
Yeah, so we've chosen to split up our robot internally. There's 2 radio receivers, one for drivetrain related stuff and one for all the auxiliary things. So that's spin, punch, and self-right. So when the weapon speed controller died, due to its output shorting, and I don't blame it at all, that don't do that to speed controllers, it'll kill them pretty quickly. That also meant our receiver for our self-righter and a receiver for punch, which punch wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. That carriage would not slide. Dylan probably did try to make it move, but not going anywhere. So that meant even though the self-righter system was fine, it had no signal to actually raise and lower. So that meant we couldn't flip them off with it. And also our robot was having some power resetting issues. I think we went and found our power switches, which made by Awachi actually, but this one's on us, were pretty arced and corroded. And that or something else was causing us to effectively move, dip out. So back to the question, we effectively had them land on us as a hat and then drove around for a minute or two with conflicting advice because we weren't driving fast enough to be able to dislodge them by running into the wall,
right,
or screws or anything. And then there was conflicting things of like, oh, run him into the wall, and then you hear Trey yell over the thing, don't go to the wall, because Trey doesn't want fire anywhere near the polycarbonate. So it was just back and forth and Tantrum wandering around before they went, okay, stop the match, went out there, set the fire out a little bit on fusion because it was down to smoldering at that point, picked it up, set it on the ground, restarted the match, and started the actual count out. So I was highly curious how they're going to edit that, because effectively it's like a minute or two of a robot just wandering aimlessly around the arena with a robot on its head.
You can see here, this is post separation.
So after this happened, Tantrum was driving around with limited mobility as far as drive a bit, reset, where it's like, Show me movement. I'm moving. Please count them out. Please count them out. We're still moving. Yeah, but they chose to edit it and pull out an additional minute or so of randomly driving around, which is probably good from a TV entertainment perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was a very exciting match, to say the least, which brings us to the future. So we have a very random Miles and asked how long will it take to fix the punching mechanism, and King Brandon 14 said, did we bring any spare parts? Are we ready to fix it? And someone also asked, the BattleBots page asked, is damage repairable in time for our next fight? So we actually have some pictures of the damage, which will hopefully help Aren explain.
So here's Dylan, give him the thumbs up that he'll be able to mock me for a while for driving into an angry spinning gyro fusion. Yeah, you can see the disc is tilted like 20 something degrees, etc., trying to get ripped out of the carriage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, out of the carriage getting ripped out of the rails. Hop to the next photo. So we had done some updates at the event. So you can see here this aluminum part, the non-colored aluminum part. That was the part that initially had failed in the Valkyrie fight, and that stopped the carriage backwards. So we remade this one, which beefed that up a bit from going downwards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you jump to the next photo, there's effectively after we get the carriage out.
Yep.
So that Z-shaped piece of metal is not supposed to be that shape. So luckily we have some pretty awesome sponsors. So we actually had 3 full sets of that punch weapon assembly, like that entire carriage rail assembly at the event with us.
Yeah.
And 2 of those were in fully assembled robots. So we came out of the fight and went, okay, we're going to treat this robot as spares and get the other robot ready to go and good to go forward. So we did write off effectively the left side of this weapon rail. If we really had to, I think I could have machined that flat, made an insert, etc., to get it back to functional, but we didn't have to at that point.
Yeah, awesome. And so finally, the last question about our fusion fight, Poet Life asked, what is one of the best battles of the night? Is there anything else you would do differently, hindsight?
Yeah, so the first couple, I was pretty happy with how our ground game was doing against their wedgelets, because even if, so we did manage to punt them into the wall pretty early on as far as corral and punt and make the horizontal hit the wall, and that's great that they're fighting the arena. And then we corralled decently and got a punch in on the corner, so I was pretty happy if we're actually getting a hit in somewhere on that robot that isn't weapon, which isn't actually that much of that robot. And then the biggest thing would have been when they're gyring, etc. Just let them finish gyring. They're either going to hit the floor or land back on their wheels and then engage them again. But we can take the horizontal hits, and then it was proving if we stayed pointed towards them with the wedgelets to engage the vertical, at worst we would tie. With how their setup worked, arc and then vertical face wise, even if they beat our wedgelets, it would just scrape up and hit against the surface, and we just stiff arm them away. So it's actually working pretty well to not get hit by the vertical spinner, which is the one I'm usually more scared of because the ground is on your side if you deliver a hit with a vertical. Cool. So yeah, don't spin into the driver where you dancey thing.
Yeah.
Don't drive into it. Bad call.
Sure. Cool. So finally, we're at the end of this video, which brings us to our next fight next week against Bloodsport of all robots. So what is our plan going into it? What modifications are we possibly making? We have here a picture.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough we get to watch the Bloodsport fight live against Gruff. And we saw in their first hit, their gigantic tri-bar weapon exploded and lost one piece exploded off and nullified the weapon, which did put on a decent display of very stable, good pushing power drivetrain. If you're able to lose your weapon as a spinner and then turn into a control bot and still win the fight, that says a fair amount. And I've also seen Justin and like I've seen them a couple of years at Vex events, and they're real sharp drivers. So I knew it would be a fun driving match regardless. And the other thing we did here was, if someone breaks your future opponent's weapon, copy their homework. Try to do it again. So they talked a little bit in their fight during the fight, Chris and Kenny had brought up the chocolate bars. We just now refer to them as gruff bars. And they're just big chunks of steel just welded to the front end. We had some extra bits laying around and we're able to rearrange stuff to make weight. And yes, copy that homework, just change it up a little bit so no one's too suspicious. And the other thing we did here was, you can notice there's a big vertical chunk, but there's also that extra part on the above, and that is to help mitigate the height that Bloodsport hits at. We didn't know what blade they were going to run against us. They've got a multitude, a bunch of fun videos over on their channel if you want to check them out with regards to all the various things that go. It's amazing how much detail can go into a single piece of metal. But yeah, we didn't know what they were going to run against us. It's pretty easy for them to plop a new bar on, tighten stuff up, do a weird like ritual dance thing, and then it's good to go. So yeah, we figured covering our heavily armored steel face with more steel was probably one of the best bets we had going into the fight.
Awesome. Thanks, Aren. Make sure to tune in next week as we'll be doing another debrief after our fight with Bloodsport. Follow us at seemsreasonable.com on Instagram. No .com, just at seemsreasonable on Instagram. We're going to be posting a similar story next week, asking for questions. We love to answer them. Feel free to put any in the comments below, and we will also answer them. And thank you all for your support. We're super thrilled and overwhelmed to be going this far into the tournament. And yeah, thank you.
Also, we have a Redbubble merch store now. You can buy Tantrum shirts.
We do. That'll be linked in the description as well. Make sure to get some cool stickers. And my personal favorite is the baby gear that says Tantrum on it. Very fitting, if I might say so myself. So highly recommend. Get some. It's cool. We love it. Love the support. And yeah.
If you get a Tantrum shirt, you can also go to the Waiachi store and get a Waiachi hat, and then you'll match Tantrum in the last fight.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's genius. So now you all definitely have to do that. Tantrum shirt, Waiachi hat, and then you'll be just like us. And send us pictures.
And don't set it on fire.
Yeah, send pictures. Anything.
Would not advise.
Cool. All right. See y'all next week. Bye-bye.